I want you to picture two houses, same street, same neighborhood, same zip code, the kind of quiet American street where the houses look almost identical from the outside. The first house belongs to a family bringing home around $78,000 a year. Walk inside and you will find furniture still being paid off on a store credit card. A driveway with 2 car payments running at the same time. A refrigerator stocked from a weekly grocery run that somehow always costs more than it should. Closets packed with clothes bought on sale that rarely get worn. A garage so full of accumulated things over the years that neither car has fit inside it for longer than anyone in the house wants to admit. The couple who lives here checks their bank account the way most people check the weather before a long drive, with that familiar knot in the stomach, with the specific anxiety of someone who already suspects the answer before the number loads. They have less than 2 weeks until the next paycheck. A handful of bills are due before then. They are not reckless people. They are not irresponsible people. They are tired people doing the best they know how with a system nobody ever sat them down and properly explained. The second house sits a few doors down. Same street, same neighborhood, similar income. Walk inside and you will notice something immediately. Space, not emptiness, not deprivation. Just room to breathe. A couch that is paid for. A driveway with 1 car and no monthly payment attached to it. A kitchen stocked with what actually gets eaten. A garage with cars inside it, and a workbench that gets used on weekends. The couple here checks their bank account the way most people check the weather on a pleasant Tuesday morning, with the quiet confidence of people who know what is in there because they put it there deliberately. They also have less than 2 weeks until the next paycheck. They also have close to a year of living expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account earning interest while they sleep. They invest every single month without drama or debate. They have not had a financial emergency spiral into a financial crisis in years. Not because nothing went wrong. Because when things went wrong, they were prepared. Same street, similar income. Completely different financial lives. Now before we go further, I want to be honest about something. Real life is more complicated than any two-house story can capture. One family might be carrying student loans. One might have aging parents who need financial help. One might have medical costs that arrived uninvited and never fully left. Life does not distribute its expenses evenly, and a finance video that pretends otherwise is not being straight with you. What I want to show you today is not that financial stability is simple. It is that there are specific rules the financially stable tend to follow that most Americans were simply never taught. And understanding those rules is the starting point for everything else. This is not a story about income. For many Americans, income is not actually the biggest problem anymore. The bigger problem is what happens after income increases. Because study after study on American household finances shows the same pattern. When earnings go up, spending tends to go up with it. The raise arrives, and the lifestyle quietly expands to meet it. The bonus lands and the vacation gets a little longer. The promotion comes through, and suddenly the old car feels out of place with the new title. The money shows up, and the gap between what comes in and what goes out stays almost exactly the same. This is why Americans earning $150,000 often report the same financial stress as Americans earning $60,000. The number changed. The gap did not. Financial stability is not only an income problem. For a lot of Americans, it is a gap problem. The distance between what comes in and what goes out. And today, I want to show you 7 rules that protect that gap. Not complicated strategies. Not get-rich shortcuts. Just 7 honest rules that the financially stable tend to follow while most people are still waiting for the income increase that was supposed to fix everything. Rule 1. Know your real take-home number and build your entire life around that. This sounds obvious. Most people do not actually do it. The mistake almost every American makes is building their financial life around their gross salary. The number on the offer letter. The number that sounds good at dinner. But that is not what you earn. What you actually earn is what arrives in your bank account after federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, Medicare, health insurance premiums, and any other deductions that leave before you ever see the money. And here is where it gets important for an American audience specifically. That take-home number varies significantly depending on where you live. Someone earning $78,000 in Texas, which has no state income tax, takes home a meaningfully different amount than someone earning the same salary in California or New York. Filing status matters. Dependents matter. Retirement contributions matter. Depending on your specific situation, a $78,000 salary might leave you with anywhere from roughly $54,000 to $62,000 in actual take-home pay. The only way to know your real number is to look at your actual paycheck, not your contract. The family struggling on that street makes every financial decision based on the gross number. They buy the car that fits a $78,000 income. Then, the actual take-home arrives, and the math never quite works, and they genuinely cannot explain why. The second family makes every decision based on what actually hits their account. Every single one. And before the month starts, they decide in advance where each dollar is going. Not approximately. Specifically, a simple written plan. What goes to housing? What goes to food? What goes to transportation? What gets saved? What gets invested? Every dollar gets a direction before it has a chance to drift somewhere unintended. This one shift alone would change more American household finances than almost any other single adjustment. Rule 2. Build your emergency fund before almost anything else. The reason many American families cannot seem to get ahead has less to do with income and more to do with a cycle that keeps resetting their progress. The account starts to build up. Then the car needs work. Then, the medical bill arrives months after the procedure, and nobody budgeted for it. Then the appliance that was already running on borrowed time finally stops. The emergency takes back everything that was building, and they start from zero again. And after this happens enough times, starting over starts to feel like the natural state of things. Healthcare is worth pausing on here, because it is one of the most powerful financial forces in American life, and most financial content barely mentions it. A single unexpected medical event can cost an uninsured or underinsured American family more than a year of savings. Even with insurance, the deductibles, the out-of-pocket maximums, the surprise bills from out-of-network providers nobody warned you about can arrive long after the health crisis has passed and create a financial one in its place. The emergency fund is not just for car repairs. For millions of Americans, it is the only buffer standing between a health event and a debt spiral. 3 to 6 months of living expenses is the standard guidance, and it holds up well for most situations. Today, most Americans have access to high-yield savings accounts through online banks that offer meaningfully better interest rates than traditional checking or savings. Institutions like Ally, Marcus, SoFi, Discover, and Capital One 360 regularly offer rates that at least partially offset inflation while keeping your money accessible when you genuinely need it. The goal is separation, not inaccessibility. Keep it somewhere distinct from your everyday checking so a difficult week does not quietly drain it, but reachable when a real emergency arrives. The second family on that street is not having fewer emergencies than their neighbors. They are having the same ones. The difference is that when an emergency arrives, it costs them money, not momentum. Rule 3. Understand what credit card debt is actually costing you. Let me describe what carrying a credit card balance actually is in plain terms. It is a loan charging somewhere between 20 and 29% annual interest on money you already spent on things you may no longer own. It is among the most expensive debt most Americans carry, and it is also the debt most Americans treat as simply part of the monthly budget, something to manage rather than something to eliminate. Consider a family carrying around $14,000 across a few cards, which is close to the American average for households that carry balances. Their minimum payments cover mostly interest each month, with very little reducing the actual balance. At average credit card interest rates, the total interest paid over the life of those balances can easily exceed the original amount borrowed, paid on things that in many cases no longer exist. The vacation, the appliances that have since been replaced, the clothes worn out and donated. The debt remains long after the purchases are gone. Now I want to say something directly because finance content often skips it. Sometimes people carry credit card debt not because of poor decisions, but because life intervened. Unemployment, illness, divorce, a stretch of months where the income dropped and the bills did not. If that is your situation, this is not a conversation about failure. Debt that happened because life happened is not a character flaw. The important question is whether it becomes permanent. Because carried indefinitely at 20 to 29% interest, it becomes one of the most powerful forces working against your financial stability. The second family uses a credit card for almost everything. The points are genuinely useful, but they pay the full balance every month without exception. The card works for them rather than the other way around. That one discipline, paying in full every month, is the line between a credit card being a financial tool and a financial trap. Rule 4. Let depreciation hit someone else first. The average new car payment in America right now sits around $700 to $750 a month. And for many Americans, there is always a next payment, because there is always a next vehicle before the current one is paid off. Over a working lifetime, this pattern represents an enormous transfer of wealth from the buyer to the lender and the dealership. Here is the concept worth understanding before the advice. A new vehicle loses a significant portion of its value in the first few years of ownership. The steepest drop happens early, which means the buyer of a new car absorbs the most painful part of that depreciation curve, and then often trades the vehicle in before the payments are finished to begin the cycle again with another new vehicle. Buying a vehicle that is 3 to 5 years old means someone else absorbed that early depreciation. You pay a lower purchase price for a vehicle that, if well maintained, still has most of its useful life ahead of it. This is not about suffering or embarrassment. It is about understanding that the financial difference between these two approaches compounded over 15 or 20 years is substantial. A quick note on the used car market, because anyone who bought or tried to buy a used vehicle in the last few years already knows this. Pandemic-era supply chain disruptions made used vehicles unusually expensive for a period. That market has been correcting. But the principle holds regardless of the specific market conditions. Paying less for reliable transportation and redirecting the difference to savings and investments is a pattern that builds wealth. Financing the newest version of a vehicle you do not technically need is a pattern that delays it. Rule 5. Invest early, automatically, and before you can talk yourself out of it, the second family on that street invests a meaningful percentage of every paycheck, not after the bills. The transfer happens automatically within days of payday before the money has time to feel available. Before the weekend looks like a good time for a trip. Before the sale feels urgent. Before the money can dissolve into the 1,000 small decisions that turn available dollars into spent ones. This is the rule most Americans intend to follow and find genuinely difficult to execute. Because investing whatever is left at the end of the month means investing very little. There is rarely much left at the end of the month when the full paycheck has been available for 30 days. Before investing anywhere else, there is one move that deserves priority for most Americans with access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. Capturing the full employer match on your 401k. If your employer matches contributions up to a certain percentage and you are not contributing at least that much, you are leaving guaranteed compensation on the table. It is one of the very few truly risk-free returns available, and it is worth prioritizing before any other investment decision. Beyond the match, A Roth IRA deserves consideration for many Americans, particularly those who expect to be in a similar or higher tax bracket in retirement. Contributions grow tax-free, and qualified withdrawals in retirement are not taxed. The annual contribution limits change periodically, so it is worth checking current year's guidelines. On the math of long-term investing, historical average market returns have been around 7% annually after inflation over long periods. That is a historical average, not a guarantee. Markets have years of strong gains and years of significant losses. Fees, timing, and individual circumstances all affect outcomes. But the general principle that consistent investing over long periods has historically produced meaningful growth is well supported by evidence. The specific numbers will vary. The direction of the principle holds. Start with whatever you can. Automate it. Increase it gradually. And leave it alone long enough to matter. Rule 6. Define what enough looks like before lifestyle inflation defines it for you. Here is a trap that catches many Americans who finally reach a good income level. Without a clear personal definition of enough, the lifestyle expands automatically to consume whatever the new income allows. The new salary becomes the new normal. The new normal generates new wants. The wants become needs. And 5 years after the raise that was supposed to change everything, the financial stress is identical, just denominated in larger numbers. This pattern has a name in behavioral economics: lifestyle inflation. And it is one of the most powerful forces working against long-term financial stability in American households. It does not feel like a decision because it mostly is not one. It just happens. Gradually, invisibly, one reasonable seeming upgrade at a time. The second family made a conscious choice that interrupted this pattern. They decided in advance what kind of home was sufficient for their actual life. What kind of vehicle met their real transportation needs. What level of monthly spending created genuine comfort and satisfaction without constantly reaching toward whatever they could theoretically afford at the current income level. And when the income grew, they held the lifestyle where it was and redirected the difference. This is not deprivation. They take vacations. They go out. They replace things when they genuinely wear out. They live comfortably. What they do not do is continuously redefine upward what comfortable means every time the paycheck grows. There is a ceiling, not just a floor. Inflation deserves mention here as well, because it quietly raises the cost of everything over time. Holding your lifestyle flat does not mean your expenses stay flat. Groceries, utilities, insurance, and healthcare tend to cost more each year. This makes the discipline of defining enough and protecting the gap even more important over time. Inflation is working against you consistently. Your financial habits need to work consistently in the other direction. Rule 7. Protect the gap between what you earn and what you spend like it is the most valuable thing you have. Because it is. Everything in this video comes down to one concept: the gap. The distance between what comes in and what goes out. And I want to be honest with you the way a good friend would be, rather than the way a finance video usually is. Most of us have made at least one decision that closed the gap when we knew better. The car that felt like a reward. The house that stretched the budget just a little further than it should have. The credit card that absorbed a season of life that was genuinely hard. Maybe you've bought a car you later regretted. I think most people have. Maybe you've looked at a monthly statement and genuinely could not account for where a significant portion of it went. That experience is more common than anyone admits in public. The point is not perfection. The financially stable family 4 doors down did not build their situation through flawless decision-making. They built it through consistent decision-making. There is a difference. Flawless is not available to human beings with real lives and unexpected expenses and moments of weakness and children and aging parents and medical surprises and all the other things that arrive without scheduling appointments first. consistent is available. Deciding that protecting the gap is the filter through which financial decisions get evaluated, and then returning to that filter even after the months when it slipped, is something anyone can do regardless of income. The gap is not just a financial concept, it is optionality. The ability to leave a job that is damaging your health without immediately facing catastrophe. The ability to handle what comes next without it becoming a crisis. The ability to make decisions based on what you actually want rather than what your obligations require. These options are only available when there is margin between income and spending. When every dollar that comes in is already spoken for, before it arrives, none of those options exist, regardless of how large the income is. The second family on that street has those options. They built them quietly, over years, through decisions that mostly went unnoticed by everyone around them. The older car, the house that fit their life without straining their budget. The automatic investment that happened before they could spend it. The credit card paid in full every month. None of it dramatic. None of it impressive at the time. All of it compounding in the background while life happened around it. Let me bring you back to that street one final time. Both families are still there. Same houses, same neighborhood, similar incomes. Nothing about the street has changed. But here is something the two-house comparison cannot fully capture. The second family did not get there because they made perfect decisions. They got there because they made boring decisions. Over and over again. In the months when it was easy, and in the months when it genuinely was not. Wealth almost never looks exciting while it is being built. It looks like the same car for another year. It looks like the automatic transfer that happens quietly in the background on payday. It looks like saying not yet to things that would have felt good in the moment, but would have cost something real over time. The first family is not a cautionary tale about bad people. They are a portrait of what happens when capable, hardworking Americans navigate financial decisions without a clear set of rules to navigate by, without anyone sitting them down and explaining honestly what the choices actually cost over time. Without the kind of conversation most families never have, and most schools never provide. These 7 rules are not secret. They are not sophisticated. What they are is consistent. And consistency applied over time is the only real engine of financial stability that has ever worked for ordinary Americans living ordinary lives. The street is the same. The rules are the same. Where you go from here is yours to decide.